All right, man, sleepy, dreamy, sort of Tame Impala, boom bap-ish type stuff. I'm gonna show you how I made this beat right here. Sounds dope, right? Let's pop the hood. Let's take a look at what's going on. So the first thing I did was I opened up my Motion Man analog lab bank. This is an analog lab bank that is made completely from scratch by me. It was made on my daughter's like student keyboard. I put a microphone up to the speaker and just recorded a C in each octave. Ran that through my tape machine right here, added a bunch of crazy effects to each patch. The goal with the analog lab bank was to use the parameters inside of Analog Lab to be able to play very simple chords and get them to sort of bloom and get activity to happen, get motion in your chords. So the patch in here is called Aperitif, and by itself with no effects processing, right out the box, it sounds like this. I named it Aperitif because it sounds to me like you're sipping an Aperol Spritz like underwater in the game BioShock. Is that tracking or am I completely out of my mind? I don't know. So with the Motion Man Analog Lab Bank and that Aperitif patch, I laid down a chord progression that I wanted to sound very, very cyclical. So a cyclical chord progression, without getting too nerdy about it, is one that avoids the first chord in the scale. So if you're in B minor, you're actually gonna start on a G major 7, and the B minor is not gonna happen until the middle of the chord progression. That way, the ear just wants to hear it over and over and over again. Let me show you what I mean. So again, without too much nerdiness going on, we have a actual 2/5 going back to that G major 7, but that 2/5 progression doesn't actually belong diatonically to any D major or B minor scale. That's why it sounds, dare I say, a little bit jazzy. It's a very common progression in a lot of pop songs, or some version of it at least. But like I said, the goal is to stay away from the B minor as the start of the phrase. The B minor's there, but it's like in the middle of a 4-bar phrase, so it doesn't ever feel like you've actually arrived, which makes you just want to keep listening to the chord progression. Just to show you those same chords with more patches inside the Analog Lab Bank, the Motion Man Bank, I'm gonna go through a lot of these presets because it really, really does lend itself to laying out chords and not doing much else, and you let the Analog Lab Bank sort of play the motion for you. Check it out. So to save some RAM space, I actually printed those chords to audio. It was really just about adding the layers after that with the same kind of MIDI, even though I altered some of the velocities and some of the actual placements of these notes. Another one of my favorite all-time patches inside of Contact for this same kind of warbly, weird, tapey kind of sound is in fact named Tapes. It's a Contact bank by the Final Loop. Sounds insane. There's a whole bunch of crazy patches in here. Here's what this one sounds like. The patch itself sounds kind of haunted, like cursed almost, but the chords are so pretty that there's like this balance of like sweet and salty going back and forth. Now I added a little bit of one of my favorite reverbs onto that. Ladybug Reverb by Safari Pedals. I cannot say enough good things about the Safari Pedals family, man. They really really did it right with a bunch of their plugins, man. This is like a spring reverb with some built-in lo-fi saturation in it. And then just to get rid of some of that harshness, I use the Fruity Parametric EQ right where it's starting to peak out a little bit. Now, keeping with stacking those layers, I added another one of my favorite instruments. I have a couple of different Mellotron emulators. For those of y'all who don't know, the Mellotron was a keyboard that was released in 1963. The fact that that was the year is still mind-blowing to me. What it basically did back then was when you pressed down any key, an actual tape loop was activated. So you had a tape loop that they recorded of like someone singing a note or a tape loop of somebody playing a flute. So the result was something that sounded absolutely insane. You can hear it on Strawberry Fields by the Beatles. I believe it is on the What's Going On album by Marvin Gaye. Somebody's gonna have to verify that for me. Not the song What's Going On. Way deep in the middle around the Flying High and the Friendly Sky part of that album, I believe there is a vocal in there that's a Mellotron. Anyway, enough with the nerdy stuff. Air Music Technology has probably my favorite emulation of the Mellotron right now. Following the same chords, but I added kind of this lead line on top that actually sounds like more what a flute player would play. Now to send that off into the distance a little bit, I use the Arturia Rev Spring 636. You guys know how many spring reverb plugins I put on my drum breaks and how many different ones I use. Then again, just a little bit of the fruity parametric EQ to get rid of some of the harshness and the overly low end stuff going on. So let's just hear the tapes, contact bank, and the flutes patch inside of the Air Music Tech Mellotron together. Sounds really haunting and almost cursed, but kind of tender at the same time, which is exactly the goal. So in another section, I added that Motion Man analog lab bank keys back in, and then I used another one of my favorite instruments. This is called Scorch by Sauceware Audio, man. Crazy instrument. Inside of Scorch, they have a bunch of these patches that actually sound like multiple instruments together being played at different times, too. I love these kind of instruments, the ones that I've been using so far in this beat, because although I know music theory really well, I'm not much of a keyboard player. So I can get really complex chord progressions out, but I can't actually embellish the way a keyboard player would. What I end up using to sort of make up for that is these patches inside of Scorch tapes, and why I made the Motion Man analog lab bank, to just sort of have chords that have these weird artifacts, even though they're really simple. So again, I'm back in my spring reverb bag. I put the ROSPR by Black Rooster Audio on it. Spring reverb, give it a little bit of a stereo spread, a little bit of ambient. So now this is all for the chorus, right? We've got the Motion Man bank, the tapes together, and now the Scorch. Ah, man, it's making the hairs on my arm stand up, dog. So I'm a big fan of printing the master track and then resampling it. I did exactly that with the flute pattern that we used for the Mellotron. A little bit of RC20 onto it. What you can do inside of FL Studio very easily is just take something up an octave. You just raise the pitch with this little knob right here, all the way up 1200 cents, and then you get... Sounds kind of tormented and tortured, honestly. It's kind of killing. So, the Motion Man analog lab bank, the tapes contact bank, the Scorch by Sauceware Audio, and our printed audio raised up an octave from the Air Music Tech Mellotron. All four of them for the big chorus in this beat. All right, so now it's time to get to the part I know you've all been waiting for, the drums. I used one of my own drum breaks from the low tape pack. So the break that we use is called Drum Break Charmeleon 72 BPM. Completely made from scratch, by the way. I cannot emphasize that enough. Me, drums, mics, tape machine, your hard drive. So we took that inside of FL Studio and we sped it up to the tempo, which is 162 BPM, about 81 if you're counting in half. We chopped it to alter the pattern just a little bit. Now, a couple of effects that I added on it. First, the fruity parametric EQ, and I really zoned in on where the snare hits. So you can see it's at like 154 hertz, and it also lends itself to the attack of the kick drum. A little bit of the RC20 retro color just to add a little bit of high-end sparkle. Then, one of my favorite reverbs for actually adding a little bit of dark, grimy reverb to drums is called the Dirty Dog Reverb by Safari Pedals. So the time is way low. This thing has a pre-delay on it. It has a little bit of overdrive you can send into it. I have the blend very low, but it's very dramatic when you add it. And the last thing that I added was a new plugin that I've been working with a lot. It's called the SSL Fusion Violet EQ. It's made by SSL. Comes with the Slate Digital bundle if you actually have that too. Adding a whole bunch of low end and a whole bunch more high end sparkle. So then to just add to the groove a little bit, I needed some percussion on top of it. I have a pack called These Hands. It's literally hundreds of percussion sounds that I use, real percussion instruments. I'm sponsored by Latin Percussion, so I have a lot of Latin percussion instruments in here. I made a whole sample pack full of loops, one-shots, like smaller top loops, raw and mixed. I used one of the top loops for this pack, and it sounds like this. So that with the drums together is insane. No effects were added to that percussion loop. That's exactly how it sounds out of the pack. The only thing that I did do is I used the fruity limiter inside of FL Studio, and I actually just side chained the percussion loop to the break so it would duck out a little bit when the kick drum hits. Now, let's move on to the bass sounds in this beat. Two different bass sounds in this beat. One for the main verses and choruses, and another for the outro and the second verse specifically. I went inside of Contact. Everybody knows this patch if you have Contact. It's the Scarby Rickenbacker bass. I freaked it a little bit inside of the actual Contact patch. Here's what it sounds like by itself. Now, to add a little bit more grit onto it, I used the Arturia plugin. It's called the Distortion Op Amp 21. This is based on the old Sans Amp pedals. All my working bass players out there, you probably know what this is. All of my non-working bass players that didn't play gigs every night, you probably have no idea what this thing is. It's based on an old pedal that bass players used to use. Basically, it just sounds like a distorted bass amp, and it's in the best way possible. I'm going to say this knowing that some people are going to get it and some people are going to go look this up. But if you listen to the band Yes, there's a progressive rock band from the 70s called Yes, and their bass player was really famous for this kind of tone. So the second bass patch that I use is for after the first chorus that comes in. This thing is inside Analog Lab. It's one of my favorite patches for bass, specifically inside of Analog Lab. It's called Dark Roller. You can look it up inside of Analog Lab. It's right there. Almost everybody knows it. Almost everybody has it. It literally is the 2014 Bryson Tiller bass patch. Like... I use it in almost every one of my beats at some point. So other than that, man, we're getting to like the ear candy part of this beat. I used a cymbal sound from my Left Field One Shots Volume 4 pack, copied it over and reversed it, and then added the main version so you get a super dope, super easy, right? I also, in a couple parts of this beat, I added a synth sound effect from my Slow Burn Volume 5 pack. These were all made from scratch on an analog Moog synthesizer and a bunch of delay pedals. There's 100 of those inside the Slow Burn Volume 5 pack. So you can imagine these dramatic effects going into the beat. Here's the first verse into the chorus without those two dramatic effects, without the cymbal and the synth sound effect. Now with those two, the cymbal and the synth sound effect. Ear candy, man. It is so important. I promise you, your favorite songs all have those weird little sound effects or like just things that catch your ear that you don't even know are catching your ear. It's so important to me. The other thing is, at the end of this beat, I actually created an outro for it where a singer or a top line writer or even a rapper would write something at the end of the song. And let me get on my soapbox moment, because I love doing this for all my beats for one reason only. Fam, as songwriters and producers and just as a culture, we have lost the intro, outro, bridge, middle eight, whatever you want to call it. We have lost song structure. Some of my favorite R&B songs from the last 5 to 8 years, none of them have third verses, none of them have bridges, none of them even have outros. As producers, we got to do better, man. Create like a send-off, like a goodbye hug for the beat that you're making, man. That's exactly what I did, and I added another one of my drum breaks from the Patterns pack. Lo-fi'd it a little bit. I actually took the formant shift down, which actually changes the vowel sound of any audio that you're playing. So after the second chorus on the way out, here's what I did. Give the listener something to say goodbye to. So that's it, man. I'm going to play the whole beat from the beginning. I'm going to have some text on the screen that's explaining a little bit of the nerdy stuff that's going on behind the scenes of it. All the sample packs that I use that are mine in this beat are on my website. All the analog lab patches that I use that are in my bank are on my website as well. So let's play the beat, man. Here we go. Thanks for tuning in, man. I'll see y'all next time.